Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Laguna Beach Living podcast. Today's guest is Toni Iseman, who's been a city council member for 20 years, and she's served 4 terms as mayor. Hi, Toni.
Hi.
You've been on city council for a very long time, and you served as mayor. So tell me a little bit about how you got started.
I got started doing fundraisers and things for people that I wanted to get elected because I had no intention of being the candidate. I don't think very many people think they want to be the candidate, but when you got somebody you really like and you like the way they think, their values, then you go out. And back in those days, it was, pre-internet. And which sounds like
I know.
Yeah, and it was another century, but it was a lot of labor. You'd stamp the envelopes and send them in the mail. It was that kind of campaign.
Yeah.
So, but there were people that I'd worked for long and hard, and there was particularly Bob Gentry, who was mayor of Laguna. He was the first openly gay mayor in the country.
That's amazing. And he was right here in Laguna.
Yeah. He was over at UCI. He was an administrator at UCI, and he called a meeting at his house for people to find somebody to run for council. So I went over there, and we all came out with a list of like 25 people, and everybody else had a better excuse than I.
Why you couldn't run?
Yeah, I really didn't want to run. I mean, I had all kinds of reasons, but ultimately it came down to, and this is an interesting story. Tom Brokaw wrote a book called The Greatest Generation, and it was about the World War II soldiers and how they really turned the world around. And he was this guest speaker at graduation at Harvard. And he challenged the graduates at Harvard, what were they going to do? What sacrifices were they willing to make? And that was a really powerful question. So if I didn't want to run for council because I didn't want to look like an idiot, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not a politician. I don't want to raise money, all of those things. Because if somebody's running for the first time, they really have to go through those questions of what are they doing. But I got coached.
Oh, you did?
And I
By who?
I knew, Bob Gentry and so forth. I read a lot, and I watched some meetings, and I ultimately found myself really knowing more than I thought that I knew. Mm-hmm. Bob said that I wouldn't have any problem because I had been the president of the academic senate at Orange Coast College. And he said, if you can handle politics on a college campus, you can handle politics anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I did have that behind me. And you have to have tough skin. And I didn't think I had tough skin, but it's gotten a lot tougher. So, I mean, for anyone who's upset about what's going on, would like to do something about it, want somebody else to do it. That's usually what people think. I wish somebody'd do this.
Yeah.
And then you have to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. That's when it's really like, no, I have to do it. You know? So, I think, in your generation, it's going to be interesting to see people get involved in what their issues are, mm-hmm. whatever is important. And in different communities, it's all different.
Yeah,
so.
There's different issues hitting each community. But I'm interested, before we talk about our community and what issues we are facing right now, I'm interested in hearing about what brought you to Laguna, and also at the time when you were running. Well, I'll ask you afterwards, but
okay.
What brought you to Laguna to begin with, and what was your career prior to being on city council or being a politician?
I grew up in Nebraska, mm-hmm. and one of my roommates in college lived in Corona del Mar. And even though I'd taken Spanish, I didn't translate Corona del Mar by the sea. Yeah. So anyway, I came right after I graduated. I visited her, and she she said, let's go to the beach. And I went out to get in the car, and she said, no, we're walking. So this is my first time in the ocean.
Yeah.
And that was
Wow.
1967. And I couldn't believe, the beauty, extraordinary beauty. And then we drove down to Laguna one night from Corona del Mar, and I came in and saw the night lights, and I just couldn't get over how gorgeous it was. And so
It was breathtaking.
yeah, and I thought, But then I went back to Nebraska, and I taught school for a couple of years there. I was teaching 8th grade, those combination history and English classes. In fact, I heard from one of my students who found me on the internet, and he said something about I was one of his favorite teachers, which of course teachers love hearing that.
Yeah, of course.
But, I think my real career was as a counselor. I was a much better counselor than I was a teacher. And so I did over 35 years as an educator. I moved from Nebraska and for 10 years worked in Santa Ana, real interesting district, and then 10 years in Irvine, and then the last 15 or 16 years at Orange Coast College.
And this is while you lived in, did you move straight to Laguna or to Corona del Mar?
Kind of. No, I was living in Huntington Beach for 6 months until we found a place to live in Laguna. And it's if you're going down the 3rd Street Hill and you look over to the right, there's a set of matching apartment buildings. And I lived at 404C, and we paid $240 a month for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, which we thought was really expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know it'd be interesting to know what they rent for
I
now.
know. And just with inflation, like how much that cost at that time.
Oh, yeah. And
Equivalent to.
Laguna was very different. We'd walk down that really steep Loma Terrace, and then there was a grocery store downtown, Acords. There was a floral shop, Eschbach's, and Jack Eschbach is one of the more interesting and important people in the history of Laguna. I think a great deal of the beauty in our town we can thank him for. Where the Pepper Tree is, where the killer yogurt place is, and you walk through there.
I love Pepper Tree. Yeah, the gelato shop.
Yes, he did that. He made that beautiful. And he had a store at Christmas time that was so beautiful that people were lined up on the sidewalk to get inside just to see what he'd created. He was wonderful. He, as I understand, he got sick and died very quickly, and they didn't know what he had. He was probably one of the first people with AIDS. Oh. And they didn't have a diagnosis. All they knew is that these men were dying, and it was really tragic. But he certainly left his mark.
What year is this?
This must have been 71 or 72.
And you moved here around then?
I moved here in 70. And what I used to do is go through the alley behind the flower store. This is incriminating information. And at the end of the day, they'd throw out the flowers that they didn't think were fresh. Well, they look good to me.
Well, you were thinking smart then.
So I was digging in there, and I'd take home a bunch of flowers that were beautiful. But evidently, I left some of the stuff in the alley, and they caught me and said, "Don't do it anymore."
That's
okay,
so funny.
Yeah, it was dear. I really.
Just reusing. You didn't want anything to go to waste.
Yeah, that very practical.
Yeah, very eco-friendly of you.
I am very practical, definitely.
Okay, at the time you moved here, so at the same time as when you were interested in running for council, and you did, which was what year?
98, 99.
You also worked as a counselor.
Yeah.
And do you continue to do so?
I retired in 2005.
Wow.
So it's much more time consuming now to be on the council than it was then. It's an incredible commitment. And it would be very hard for somebody to have a full-time job
And to
be
do
on the
that.
council. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be able to figure out a way so that's part of the deal with your generation. How do you have somebody, like you have a baby and, job, and then the city council, which is several meetings a week, not the ones you see, the ones that are in City Hall, but all these other meetings around, and expectations and commitments, and it makes sense, but people don't see all of those things, so it's a real shock.
Yeah.
When somebody gets on the council, and they go, "Whoa."
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like you don't know what the day-to-day life is of someone who runs on this city council, but then when you're in it, I'm sure it's just nonstop.
And the good news is that it's Laguna Beach, and the people that I meet are so interesting. I mean, that's amazing.
I'm sure.
I really believe you can knock on almost any door in town, and there's a story there. If I were a really good writer, it'd be so much fun.
To just go and knock on people's doors.
Yeah.
There's this person who does, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Humans of New York. But he's in New York City, and he just takes photos of everyday people in New York, and then he writes about their stories. And now he has a book, and he's actually even gone to Tehran and done it. But it's just so beautiful to just get everyday lives.
Wow.
And hear about what we're all doing.
That's exactly that thing. And well, I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, it's just humansofnewyork.com. I mean, I'm not affiliated with it in any way, but I just always thought that was so beautiful and such a great idea. So at the time when you didn't want to run, but you ended up running, were there other women on city council?
There were. Kathleen Blackburn was on city council. At one point, I have been the only woman at times. And then there was one time where there were 4 women and 1 guy.
What year was that?
That wasn't that long ago.
That's amazing.
It was probably about 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
And at one point it looked like there could have been, depending upon how the race went, we could have had all females on the council.
That's great.
And you don't realize how unusual that is because, what we're seeing in this last election as far as women, it's just incredible. But we elected for the state assembly Cotty Petrie Norris, who is representing the coastal area from Laguna to Huntington Beach. And I heard her speak last week, and someone had asked her how many women have been elected to this office from this seat. And the answer was none. Wow. She's the first woman. And then the next question was, how long has it been since, she's a Democrat, how long has it been since a Democrat has been elected for the seat? She's the first.
That's incredible.
So you've got a coastal, and all these coastal cities, things are starting to change. And I think there's so many issues that unite us in terms of our values, the environment, trying to figure out how to go forward with responsible things, because your generation, you're the ones, we're leaving a legacy, and we better start cleaning up what we're doing because it's absolutely essential. Cotty will be great. She will just be wonderful. So
environmental.
She's so smart. And they recognize it in Sacramento. I mean, she got there and they put her immediately on appropriations, which is the best committee of all.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's fun to watch her because you just see her brain working. She's we're really lucky. You need to interview Cotty.
Maybe I will.
Yeah. Maybe she's in town. Yeah, she's a local. She's from Laguna.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things are changing. But do you think that at the time when you were running, are we just more progressive that there were women on council at the time, or do you think things had already changed by then?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know if I know the answer. I've thought that we are more progressive than surrounding communities. That's just
That's a
kind
good way of
been-
putting it. Than our surrounding, but not necessarily
Yeah.
big cities.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Good point. That is the question relative to it. And you wouldn't think, well, when I was at Irvine High, one of the women in the cafeteria said, I don't know how you can live in Laguna Beach. All those people there, those weird people, you know?
Yeah.
How can you have a child? How can you raise a child in Laguna Beach? You know, right?
Oh my gosh.
You know, and it's like, I don't know. We are, no, let me say it differently. We were very different. And now that difference is embraced, you know, we owe the magic in our community to the fact that we had people that were independent thinkers and smart and creative and fearless and so forth. But back to when I was paying $240 a month, there's a cliche that says they roll up the sidewalks, meaning nothing happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing happened at night. They really, this was the quietest little town. And the only place, you know, after probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night was a Denny's. There was
Really?
a Denny's, very close to where Mozambique is.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they tore it down and they put in a little hotel there. But that was the extent of it. That's where people went, you know, for French fries.
That's
You know,
unbelievable.
after a night of drinking or whatever, you know, got to have some French fries and laugh and
What
talk.
time was Denny's open till?
Oh, well, I know it was open at least till midnight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but the sense of the town was there was a simplicity, and Forest Avenue. You know, there was a stationery store, a place to repair your toaster or your vacuum cleaner. You know, that kind of
Practical stuff.
yeah.
Bouchard's.
Yeah, we still have that. Yeah, that's one of the ones. But I enjoy hearing from people who don't live here, and probably at least 4 times a week, someone will say, I hadn't been in Laguna in so long, and I was so happy to see that it's still that wonderful town. I don't know how you kept it from changing, you know. And whereas this
Everywhere
whole
else.
campaign is saying, change Laguna, and yet those people, because, you know, it needs a little polishing here and there, but shabby it's not. It's quaint.
Yeah, it's
and
quaint.
It's historic, and it's has it's such a unique experience. I was talking with somebody about trying economic vibrancy, which is really hard everywhere.
Yeah.
Not just in Laguna. And the question was, look at all those empty storefronts downtown. I'm going, no. If you go downtown and you walk with somebody, if there's an empty storefront, we're waiting for the next person to move in. So any of those things, they go, well, this place is empty. Now, we're all waiting for the Hotel Laguna to open, and we're all looking forward to the theater opening. So those two things, but the city is doing everything. The city being the capital C, the city council, can't make this happen. You know, all of the property owners have to work it out.
Yeah, it's about working together. I think one of the things that I absolutely love about Laguna is the fact that we really don't have many chains in town. And I think that's something that you love about, I mean, you worked
You're
on.
right.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, my family moved here from Laguna Niguel, and I was 11 years old when I moved to Laguna. And everything just kind of, for me, even just moving 15 minutes toward the ocean was so transformative because, water is so healing and nature is so healing, just being near it. And, you know, at that age, like I was in sixth grade, and people wear so much makeup even at that age. And I came here and no one wore makeup at Thurston, and everyone was just natural, and they were beach babies. And I just really admired that it was a slower pace way of living. And it really shaped who I am. And I think, and then I started to appreciate, wow, there are no chains really. I mean, there's Taco Bell here and there, and KFC is gone, you know,
Yeah.
and, but for the most part, it's so fun to have mom and pop shops like Laguna Art Supply. And
Oh, isn't that
Bush-
wonderful?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I never want them to go away, because you should be able to support the local people in town who live off of their business, and that's their whole life. And it's wonderful because we don't need to go to another city to go buy some watercolor, or even that we have a hardware store in town. We have shoe repair. We have everything that we really need right here.
Boy, are we on the same page?
Yeah.
I've gotten in discussions with somebody who said, oh, Ocean Avenue's horrible. I never went. There's nothing on Ocean Avenue. I said, everything I want is on Ocean Avenue.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Anastasia's, you've got the consignment store, you've got the shoe repair store, you've got the art supply store, you have Cafes Inc., you've got the post office on the other side, then you've got the bank, and then
you run your errands.
You got the grocery store, and then you got the this. And you're going to run into somebody, you know, right?
Yeah, totally.
You know, that you can't go downtown without running into somebody.
someone, and you get all your errands done right down there. Yeah, you're right. You go to the bank, you go to the post office, you go get your coffee. But I think, like you said, I think polishing is a really great way of putting it, because I do think that our town there's got to be a happy medium and a balance, because our town is run on tourism as well. Maybe not the main shops that we're talking about, but then there's so much tourism that keeps this town going throughout the year. And with that, there's like, I've read some interviews, and obviously we are the beach town for all these surrounding communities, and trying to have not the right kind of tourist, but an educated tourist come in that cares for our beach and doesn't want to trash it. Growing up, there's just so much trash left sometimes.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
And like, again, even I love keeping it quiet too, and as far as like motorcycles revving up their engines.
That's my baby. Maybe I'll become in my next life a police officer, and I'll arrest noisy motorcycle people.
And get rid of motorcycle police then.
Something good happened in the last few months. It used to be if a guy stopped, or a police officer, man or woman, stopped a noisy motorcycle, they would get a fix-it ticket. Now you stop them and they get a ticket. So there's no going in, and there's an actual penalty. So this is a big deal, because to me, I kind of feel sorry for them if they have to make that much noise. It's kind of like, oh, honey, grow up, you know.
I know. But why do you need to rev it up? Just go through town.
Yeah. Go through town. And a few years ago, I was really adamant about that. And so somebody on their motorcycle used to go back and forth in front of my house, making as much noise as they possibly could. They couldn't help it. He was just being, I guess,
Did he live in town?
I don't know who it was.
That's so weird for someone out of town to do.
Yeah, to make.
That's so weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. But I've lived in the same house since 1973. So let's see, do the math on that one. 27, 37. Yeah, going on, a lot of years. And it was an old house when I moved in, and haunted. I don't know if you've ever lived in a haunted house.
No, and I can't even stay home alone ever. I mean, at night, I still get scared. And I'm married, and I have a kid, but I'm still scared to be home alone.
Lock the doors and stuff. I think the ghosts got tired and left.
Oh my gosh!
But it was very interesting. This is my theory on what happened, but we would notice things. The sound of like somebody walking on the ceiling. It's not like somebody was upstairs walking on the floor. It more or less sounded like feet there.
That's so
scary. Sometimes. This wind would come through the room for no reason at all. And then we had 2 mirrors jump off the wall. One jumped off the wall, flipped, and neither one of them broke. and a clock dropped, but when this is going to sound strange. I think the ghost liked me because I was taking good care of her house.
Yeah.
But we went to Mexico one summer and had some people living in, and they were what you would call rational people. The one was a psychiatrist, his wife was a nurse, and somebody else was a graduate student, elementary school teacher. Those are the 4 people living there. And they were so afraid in that house that when we got back from Mexico, they were all sleeping in the same room.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they were terrified. They just but yeah.
That ghost just wanted to stay in Laguna.
Yeah.
And didn't want anyone else.
They go, who are you
house?
guys?
Yeah.
So that, and what's interesting is that, you kind of, do I believe in ghosts? I don't know, except I've got one.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it doesn't make my, intellectually, I cannot embrace, but I get it because that's the way that it is. So
I think that's the way the way those things work is we can't really explain it, and we feel like we sound crazy, but they're happening. These are things that happen. And Laguna has so much history that it's just not surprising that there are homes that are haunted, or not haunted, but just have spirits living in them. And who wants to leave Laguna?
Yeah,
really?
right.
So, okay, let's go back to you being on city council for so long. What is it like day to day? And what do you do every day?
Well, I would say probably have 40 emails a day. And of those 40, at least half of them get immediately deleted because they're junk, right? And so the 20 remaining are, at least 12, I would guess, are related to the city council. Something's going on, there's a problem in my yard. When are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? And oftentimes, what I'll do is I just connect people. Somebody will complain to me about something that I can't fix, but I know how to forward the email to the right person, and something got fixed this week just like that. The city staff has so much to do, and it's really rewarding when they can get out and take care of things right away.
Yeah.
So then you've got the internet, which is so much better than the telephone. I can't imagine if I were talking on the telephone to every one of these people when you can do.
I know, it's just so much.
Because that would almost be impossible. There's some places, for example, in Irvine, the city council has an assistant that sets up appointments. Going, whoa!
That's for each person.
Yeah,
or?
every
Wow.
council member has.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that we need to be that
Paying
fancy,
for that. Yeah.
but the level of expectation is really high, and I appreciate you've got people who have been living here forever, and you've got people who just moved in, and for those that just moved in, navigating is difficult. We have a big problem, and that is how long it takes for somebody to actually finish their house.
Oh, yeah.
And you probably read about it, you hear about it.
It's like 5 years or so to build a home here.
Yeah. That has to be fixed. I mean, basically, from the time that somebody, it's about 2 years, and it costs a lot of money to get the building permit, and then you have to build the house. Or sometimes it's just a question of remodeling, adding on, or whatever. We've got a lot of really good architects. We have people that are very carefully fixing wonderful old houses.
Yeah.
And that is it. I'm very interested in the historic nature of the community, and I don't want to happen in Laguna what happened in Corona del Mar. if you go up there, the flower streets are alphabetical, so you can always know where. If you hadn't noticed that, that's kind of interesting. But you drive through and you see what they have are these monster houses. They're like a triplex, and they go 2.5 stories up, straight back. And if there's a cottage here, and then there's another one of those monsters here, that cottage, who wants to live there when they're all in the shadows and it's all whatever? It's just lost. You can still find little bites of Corona del Mar and you see what it was like, but we don't want that to happen in Laguna.
Yeah.
And that's an important lesson. So we have to.
It's good to have guidelines and to make sure that we want to keep it a certain way, but it's just how do we keep that but also streamline it so that it's quicker.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think that's so
that
different.
has to be done, and that is a goal of mine this year, and I think I don't think there's anyone on the council who doesn't agree with that. We have to do that
because it makes it difficult if you want to redo something. You'd pay rent and you need to be able to afford that, and not very many people can. So then it's only a certain person that can.
You're right.
And that's not fair.
Well, this is funny. During the campaign, I was being blamed for the cost of housing in Laguna. And I thought, oh, for heaven's sakes, if I did this, they should, clone me and send me all over the country. So the houses will go up in value. No, I didn't do that. The ocean did that.
Yeah, I mean,
the beauty, natural beauty, the finite amount of space, the funky nature of the community. I mean, it's such a discovery for people to come here. They just cannot believe the difference between Laguna and everything else.
I know. It's so beautiful here. Yeah. It's such a gem. We're so lucky, and keeping it this way is a job for sure. Yeah. Keeping it quaint, but also making it beautiful at the same time.
And fresh, keeping it fresh.
Yeah.
I have something I'm hoping I'm able to do, and that is, it's a little wonky because I have to explain that. You may know this. We have dry weather diversions, and what that means is the storm drains in the street don't go to the ocean in the dry weather. Everything that's captured goes down to a sewer treatment plant behind the ranch in Aliso Creek. And that's so good for the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay? But when it rains, we have to open it up and everything goes to the ocean. And you probably know you don't swim after it rains because the water's so terrible.
So terrible and dirty.
And now that it's rained, I suspect the sidewalks and streets are pretty clean right now because it's rained, but all of that went to the ocean. So what I'm trying to do is to find a way for the San Diego Regional Water Quality Board, which is, they are the ones that are adamant about keeping the ocean clean, will let us sweep hose down the sidewalks and streets in the dry weather, let that dirty water go down to the sewer treatment plant, and do that quite frequently. And then when it does rain, the streets and sidewalks are relatively clean.
Yeah, so that doesn't go in the ocean.
I mean, when I was at the college, I was used to talk to my students about it. I said, can you imagine if you washed your hair every 6 months? I mean, it's just a horrible thought. These sidewalks and streets get washed every 6 months when it rains. No wonder people get ear infections. No wonder people get so sick. We have to. There's so many reasons why it makes sense. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can make it happen. We have to get first permission of the Regional Water Board and then figure out a way to have, people aren't going to be able to park in the streets. I don't know how often we would do the cleaning, maybe once a month or something, moving through town and in the commercial areas. It wouldn't be in the residential areas because they're not hit nearly as much as the commercial. But that's one of my hopes.
Especially, we're on Coast Highway. There's just so much soot, so much, ugh. There's just filth. And you need to keep it clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we do a pretty good job of, in general, having it be clean in town, which is so nice.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed. So when I was in high school, at Laguna Beach High School, I took a class, and our senior project was to do some sort of documentary, whatever, on the town. And we did one on homelessness.
Wow.
And my group went around and interviewed different homeless people in town, and then also in Los Angeles. And
What year was that?
this was in 2007, 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, 2006, 2007.
Not that long ago.
Yeah. And there was this, so my family, my dad is Mohanakar, and my parents at the time, we all lived together. They're separated now. We live right above the police station. And there was this homeless man that I had seen often, and he was downtown, and we went and interviewed him, and I'd asked him things like, I don't know, just where do you see yourself in 10 years, or all these sorts of questions. And he said he looked up and he pointed to my house. I was like crying, because at the time my parents had, it was actually Thanksgiving weekend, and it was a really awkward Thanksgiving. I have a huge family, but at that Thanksgiving, it was just the four of us, my sister and I, and my mom and my dad. And like, it was right before our Thanksgiving meal, and like they weren't talking. So it was a really awkward dinner. But right. So emotionally, it was like a really hard time for me. But for him to point to that house and to say, that's where I want to be. That's where I want to see myself in 10 years.
He didn't know it was your house?
No, he didn't know. He had no idea. But I just got so emotional, because I was thinking, like, he has no idea that just pointing and wanting to be in that place, he has no idea how much pain the people that live in that house are going through, right?
Oh.
And this is like kind of besides the point, but ever since then, it really made me interested in just homelessness in general, and our homeless population, which is getting bigger, and helping people, but learning how we can just help people, but not enable people, and what that balance is as well.
It's a tough balance,
It's
isn't it?
such a tough balance. And I think in general, everyone needs love. Everyone needs basic needs to be met. And we are all here to help each other, and we're all connected. And that's my belief system. So how do we help these people who are clearly struggling, or maybe they've just been one paycheck away and now they're in this situation, or maybe they are drug addicts. Maybe there's so many reasons why someone can be homeless.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, we have the friendship shelter, and that's great. And I know this is a very controversial issue in town, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around why it's so controversial, because everyone has a different idea of what we should do. And for me, I think I always thought that we should just help people no matter what. And now I see both sides, whereas I understand that if someone's a drug addict and they don't want to be clean, like in Seattle, that's what they did. They went away with the policy of like, okay, they don't need to be sober. They can just have a place to stay.
The housing first. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, housing first. And it's like, there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's just trial and error, and what works for some people doesn't work for others.
It works for some, but not for others.
Yeah, and I'm just so curious what your stance is on it, because I have interviewed Peter Blake before, or not publicly, but in person. I know his viewpoints, and before speaking to all these different people, because I'm so interested in it, I just take everyone's perspective, and I try and understand it, and I value everyone's opinion.
Well, Kelly Boyd and I were on the original homeless task force. But before that, Laguna had a homeless population forever. Mm-hmm. When I first came here, you would see these guys, usually men, around town. People knew their names. They would be, locals would have, I think, Wednesday night dinner, and it would be down on the beach someplace. They always had clothes. They were actually offered places to live, because, you could probably count less than 20. And it was a very accepting relationship.
Yeah.
And then everything changed. And the fact that our weather is so nice has brought homeless for every place. We had a policy of Laguna homeless. So how do you find out who the Laguna homeless is? Well, there was this checklist. Did they work in Laguna? Mm-hmm. Did they go to high school in Laguna? Do they have family in Laguna? That is somebody that we would consider our own.
Yeah.
And we were working hard to accommodate our homeless. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, we had people, the sheriff in Phoenix was offering bus money for homeless people to come to Laguna. This is,
why did he not, why Laguna? Just to convince them to leave.
Right. And that because we had, the alternative sleeping location and so forth. And we had people that were feeding the homeless. And so it was just, his way of getting people out of town. Here's the money, leave. And, if you could pay $500 a night in a hotel in Laguna, or you could come here as a homeless person and sleep at the beach. Mm-hmm. So we had a mess on our hands. We had an incredible problem. And for a brief period of time, there was a young, aggressive meth population. You just see a whole angry attitude. And I can remember being frightened at the main beach. This was maybe 8-10 years ago. And then it kind of settled down, and then it just depends on who's in town. Our police work so hard. The most difficult thing is dealing with the dual diagnosed homeless. They're mentally ill, and they self-medicate. And that happens early. I know a young man who there's a genetic predisposition mm-hmm. in schizophrenia, and he was showing oppositional behavior at 16 and 17, and they didn't quite know what was going on. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, he's just so far gone. It's so sad. You see them on the sidewalk. They're talking to themselves.
Yeah.
They're getting in fights with imaginary people. They're screaming.
I've gotten yelled at for sure.
It's scary, isn't it? Yeah.
There was one woman told me I was the devil, and I was in high school taking the bus. And
oh no!
I was like, oh my gosh, do I have bad energy? Like, does she see something in me that I don't? It's scary.
Yeah. And if I were your mother, I would have been so mad.
Yeah.
I would have gone looking for that woman. She can't be talking to you that way.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have to happen.
But then at the same time, it's part of life. So
yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. So how do we handle the situation? I think the adjustments made at the alternative sleeping location are new, and it's going to be interesting to see how it works because they're very thoughtful. I think they're going to be offering services that could help people. We have found homes for so many. I don't know if you know this. So many of our homeless people have been housed.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's amazing.
And are they the ones that are part of that checklist, or?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Our Laguna homeless population has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller because they're no longer homeless. Mm-hmm. But I would go to a national convention for cities. It's called National League of Cities, and go to all of the homeless workshops, and no one's got the solution.
I know. That's what I'm asking, because LA has a huge problem.
Terrible
Seattle
problem.
has a huge... LA, I don't know really what they're doing. I feel like they're not really doing much right now. I don't know, but I know obviously it's on everyone's agenda to do something.
Mm-hmm. San Francisco. I would say part of the homeless population are people that wash out of sober living. You know, if you're here in a sober living facility and you can't keep it together and you're out on the street, you're homeless.
Yeah.
And you're drug addicted. Mm-hmm. And I am thinking that these facilities, and people are making a fortune.
They are.
They are making a fortune. And maybe some of the programs are good. You don't hear about the good programs. But when the programs aren't working and somebody gets kicked out, to me, that when they walk in the house, they have to have a return ticket home. That's part of the deal. You don't come in, and if they get booted, back they go.
Yeah.
But they don't become our responsibility. And I'm going to try to see whether or not I can figure that out. It would be interesting from a state level. That's conceivable that we can't control it at all because they're considered Americans with disability. So we are very limited as to what we could do. But there's nothing that says that we can't require the ticket home.
Yeah. But then it's like hard. Well, I guess you just have a ticket home and then you change it because when you buy a ticket, you don't know if that's really when you're leaving or.
No, there is that whatever money it takes to get a ticket to.
Yeah, you just have that
Phoenix,
money.
And whoever's running the facility takes them to the airport and says goodbye.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just things that are happening in neighborhoods that it seems a little quieter now. Maybe I don't know why, that not as many
rain.
complaints. But yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but wow, big problems.
Yeah. Well, it was so wonderful chatting with you. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and it's so nice to meet you in person. And I just want to say it's inspiring. It's really inspiring to see a woman on city council for so long and so passionate about our town. So thank you.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more women on the city council and your generation, So, I would say to your generation, and I think I'm seeing it, get involved with whatever it is that really interests you.
Yeah.
For some people, it's the parking and traffic, and other people, it's the environmental sustainability. There are just all kinds of ways to get involved.
Yeah.
So it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.